Commander Ethan Cole stood at the window of the transport ship and watched the planet grow larger. Valanthos Prime was beautiful in a cold way. Its surface was covered in white and silver crystals that caught the light of 3 distant suns. From space, it looked like a frozen jewel floating in the darkness. Ethan was not supposed to be here. He was not a diplomat. He was not trained in fancy words or careful politics. He was a rescue pilot who had spent 15 years pulling people out of burning ships and dying colonies. He spoke from his heart, and he said what he meant. In the world of galactic diplomacy, this made him dangerous, but Earth was desperate. The Valanthi were the oldest civilization in the known galaxy. They had been building cities when humans were still learning to make fire. Their technology was beyond anything Earth could dream of. Their knowledge of medicine, energy, and space travel could lift humanity to the stars in ways that would take centuries otherwise. For 200 years, Earth had sent delegations to ask for an alliance. 47 times the Valanthi had said no. They looked at humans the way a scientist might look at insects. Interesting, perhaps, but not worth their time. The humans who returned from these failed missions were always changed. They spoke of cold halls and colder eyes. They spoke of being made to feel small and worthless. Now Ethan was delegation number 40-8. The United Earth Council had chosen him as a last option. Some said it was a joke. Others said they had simply run out of real diplomats willing to be humiliated. Ethan did not care why they chose him. He only knew that billions of people on Earth were counting on this mission. Even if they did not know it, the ship landed on a platform made of something that looked like glass, but was harder than steel. Ethan stepped out with his small team of 3 advisors. The air was thin and cold, and it smelled like nothing at all. No flowers, no soil, no life. Just clean emptiness. Valanthi guards waited for them. They were tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Their faces showed nothing. No welcome. No hostility, no curiosity, just blank perfection. Ethan and his team were led through corridors that stretched impossibly high. The walls were made of crystal that hummed with soft light. Everything was beautiful, but it felt like walking through a museum where nothing had been touched in 1,000 years. They entered the great hall where the Valanthi court waited. Hundreds of silver figures stood in perfect rows, their black eyes watching the humans approach. At the far end of the hall, on a throne that seemed grown from a single massive crystal, sat the High King. He was ancient beyond measure, his face like carved marble. His presence heavy with the weight of millions of years, Ethan's lead advisor whispered the ceremonial greeting they had practiced. It was long and complicated, full of titles and formal phrases that meant nothing to Ethan. He was supposed to repeat it exactly. He opened his mouth to begin. The words felt wrong on his tongue. They were empty sounds designed to say nothing real. Ethan had never been good at pretending, so he stopped. He took a breath. And he did something that made his advisors go pale with fear. He spoke from his heart. "Your Majesty," Ethan said, his voice clear and honest, "I am not going to pretend I belong here. I am a pilot. I rescue people. I do not know your customs, and I will probably make mistakes. But I want you to know that I came here with genuine respect. Not because I was told to say that, but because I mean it. Your people have achieved things mine can only dream of. I hope we can find a way to learn from each other." The silence that followed was absolute. His advisors looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. The Valanthi court stood frozen, their faces unreadable. Then a door opened at the side of the hall, and Princess Alindra Velshawn entered. Ethan had seen pictures of Valanthi before, but nothing had prepared him for her. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Her silver skin caught the light like liquid moonlight. Her hair was white as fresh snow and fell past her shoulders like a waterfall. But it was her eyes that captured him. They were black as the space between stars, deep and endless, and when they found his face, Ethan felt like she was looking through him to something underneath. She walked with perfect grace. Each step, silent on the crystal floor. The court parted for her without a word. When she reached the center of the hall, She stopped and studied Ethan with an expression he could not read. "You did not use the ceremonial greeting," she said. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire hall. "No, Your Highness," Ethan admitted. "I am sorry if I caused offense. Why did you not use it?" Ethan thought about lying, about making some diplomatic excuse. But those black eyes seemed to see through lies, and he found he did not want to offer her one. "Because it would have been empty words," he said. "Where I come from, we believe that words should mean something. I would rather say something true and simple than something fancy and false." The court stirred with whispers. This was not how inferior species were supposed to speak to Valenthi royalty. This was improper. This was dangerous. But Princess Alindra did something unexpected. Her head tilted slightly to one side, and for just a moment, something flickered across her ancient face. It was not quite a smile. It was more like surprise, as if she had found something she had not expected in a place she had stopped looking. "Interesting," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then she turned and walked to take her place beside her father's throne. The ceremony continued as planned, with formal words and formal gestures, and Ethan followed along as best he could. But throughout it all, he felt those dark eyes returning to him again and again. And each time they did, he felt something stir in his chest. Something that whispered this mission would be different from all the others. He did not know how right he was. That night, as Ethan lay in his guest quarters staring at the alien stars through the crystal ceiling, a message arrived. It was from Princess Alindra. She requested a private meeting the following morning. The reason she gave was simple. She wished to study human, psychological patterns. Ethan did not believe that was the real reason. But he agreed anyway. Because somewhere beneath that silver skin and those endless black eyes, he had seen something familiar, something lonely, something searching, and Ethan Cole had never been able to ignore. Someone who needed to be found. The meeting room was smaller than Ethan had expected. It was a circular chamber high in one of the crystal towers, with walls that let in the light of all three suns. Princess Alindra sat in a simple chair, her silver hands folded in her lap. Without the throne and the court around her, she seemed almost approachable. Almost Ethan sat across from her and waited. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the best way to let someone speak. "You confused me yesterday," Alindra said finally. "In 3,000 years, I have never been confused by a visiting species." "I am sorry," Ethan offered. "Do not be. It is a strange feeling. I find I want to understand it better." She studied him with those endless eyes. "Tell me, Commander Cole, why do humans say things they do not mean?" It was not the question Ethan had expected. "What do you mean?" "Your species has 1,000 words for greeting. Good morning. How are you? Nice to meet you. But you do not actually want to know how someone is. You do not actually care if the meeting is nice. The words are empty. Yet yesterday, you refused to speak empty words. Why?" Ethan thought about the question seriously. It deserved a real answer. "I think most humans do care," he said slowly. "When we say how are you, we really do want to know at least a little. But you are right that sometimes the words become habit. We say them without thinking." He paused. "I have always been bad at that. Saying things without meaning them. It feels like lying, and I was raised to believe lying was wrong. Even small lies. Even polite lies. My mother used to say that small lies are like small holes in a boat. One or two might not sink you, but they add up." Alindra was quiet for a moment. Then she asked another question, and another, and another. She wanted to know about human families, human friendship, human love. She asked about joy and sorrow, about anger and forgiveness. Each question was careful and precise, like she was trying to understand a machine. But Ethan began to notice something. The more he talked about emotions, the more something changed in her face. It was subtle, barely visible, but it was there. A tightness around her eyes, a slight catch in her breath, like someone pressing on an old wound. After 2 hours, Ethan asked a question of his own. "Your Highness, may I ask why you want to know all this?" Alendra's hands tightened slightly in her lap. For a long moment, she did not answer. "Yes, because we forgot," she said at last. Her voice was softer now, almost fragile. My people. We forgot what it feels like. What do you mean? She rose and walked to the window. The light of 3 suns painted her silver skin in shades of gold and rose. The Valanthi are immortal, she said. We do not age. We do not die of sickness. Some of us have lived for millions of years. She turned to face him. Can you imagine what it means to live forever, Commander? Ethan tried. He pictured watching everyone he loved grow old and die while he stayed the same. He pictured seeing civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. He pictured centuries blending together until yesterday and 1,000 years ago felt the same. It sounds lonely, he said. It is worse than lonely. It is unbearable. She returned to her chair, moving slowly like the weight of ages was pressing down on her. Long ago, my people felt as humans do. We loved and laughed and cried. But when you live forever, those feelings become torture. Imagine feeling grief for 1,000,000 years. Imagine heartbreak that never fades. Imagine fear that has no end. What did you do? We evolved. Or perhaps we forced ourselves to evolve. Over millions of years, we removed our emotions. We engineered them out of our bodies, our minds, our very souls. Fear was the first to go, then anger, then joy. Her voice dropped to a whisper, then love. Ethan felt a chill run through him. You removed love? We had to. Love was the most dangerous of all. To love forever, to lose forever, to mourn forever. It was driving us mad. She looked at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw something behind those black eyes. Something wounded. Something hollow. Now, we feel nothing. We exist, but we do not live. We have conquered death, Commander, but the price was everything that made life worth living. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the crystal walls. Ethan thought about his own life. The joy of his first solo flight, the pain of losing his sister to sickness, the warmth of his mother's hugs, the tears at his father's funeral, every moment of happiness and every moment of sorrow woven together into something beautiful and terrible and precious. I am sorry, he said, and he meant it from the depths of his heart. 8. Alendra asked. We are immortal. We are powerful. We have everything your species dreams of. No, Ethan said gently. You have nothing. You just described a universe without color, without music, without meaning. That is not living. That is just waiting to stop existing. Alindra stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever dared. You choose to feel pain, she said. You choose grief and heartbreak and fear. Why? When you know it will hurt, why do you choose it? Ethan leaned forward. Because the pain is not separate from the joy. They are part of the same thing. I cry at funerals because I loved someone so much that losing them breaks me. But I would not trade that love to avoid the grief. It's not ever. The sorrow is just love with nowhere to go. Something changed in Alendra's face. A crack in the perfect mask. A tremor in the still water. I do not remember what love feels like, she whispered. I have not felt anything in 4,000 years. But you remember that you used to feel. Yes. Like a story someone told me once. I know the words, but I do not know the meaning. Ethan reached out slowly and touched her hand. It was cool and smooth, like touching polished stone. Alendra went very still. Physical contact was not part of Valanthi culture. It was considered primitive, unnecessary. But she did not pull away. Maybe you can learn again, Ethan said. Maybe feelings are like muscles. They get weak when you do not use them, but they can get strong again. Is that what you believe? I believe that anything alive can change. That is what being alive means. Alendra looked down at his hand on hers. When she raised her eyes again, there was something new in them. Something fragile and frightened and desperate. Will you teach me? She asked. It was not a question a princess asked. It was not a question an immortal asked. It was a question from someone who had been empty for so long that she had forgotten she was empty. An Ethan, who had never been able to ignore someone in need. gave the only answer he could. Yes, in the days that followed, they met every morning. Ethan talked about Earth, about his childhood, about the small moments that made human life meaningful. He told her about his mother's cooking and his father's terrible jokes. He told her about watching sunsets and dancing badly at parties and crying during sad movies, and slowly, like ice melting in spring, something began to change in Princess Alindra. She started asking different questions. Not what do humans feel, but what did Ethan feel? She wanted specific stories, specific memories. She listened like someone starving for food she had forgotten existed. And once, just once, when Ethan told her about the day his sister died and how he still talked to her sometimes when he was alone in his ship, Alindra's hand trembled. It was the first time her body had reacted to emotion in 4,000 years. Neither of them knew it yet. But something had begun that could not be stopped. Something that would change both their worlds. Forever. The High Council of Valanthos gathered in the Chamber of Judgment. A vast room where the light of 3 suns focused into a single beam at the center. 12 ancient beings sat in a circle, their faces carved from millions of years of emotionless existence. At their head sat High King Velthin, his eyes like chips of frozen night. They were discussing his daughter. She smiled during yesterday's council session, said Councillor Meath. Her voice flat, but somehow carrying accusation. A full smile. It was witnessed by over 200 members of the court, she has requested. Access to the cultural archives, added Councillor Dreth. She wishes to study human art forms, music, poetry. She asked about something called dancing. The monitoring systems detected elevated activity in her emotional centers, said a third counselor. Brain patterns we have not seen in any Valanthi for 6,000 years. The suppression protocols are failing. The High King sat in silence, his ancient face showing nothing. But inside, in a place so deep he had forgotten it existed, something stirred. Something that might have been fear, if he still remembered what fear felt like. It is the resonance, Councillor Meath said. We all know it. The human is causing it. The resonance. The word hung in the air, like a curse. Long ago, before the Valanthi had removed their emotions, they had discovered something terrible. Their species was sensitive to the emotional energy of other beings. When exposed to creatures that felt strongly, the Valanthi could not help but absorb some of that feeling. It was like a mirror reflecting light, or an instrument vibrating in sympathy with another. For most species, this was harmless. Their emotions were weak, easily ignored. But some species felt with such power, such raw intensity, that being near them was like standing too close to a fire. Humans, the Valanthi had learned, burned hotter than any species in the galaxy. The resonance nearly destroyed us once, Councillor Dreth said. 10 million years ago, when we encountered the Kelathi, their emotions infected our entire civilization. Wars broke out. Families were torn apart. We nearly wiped ourselves out before we learned to suppress our feelings permanently. And now it is happening again, Meath agreed. This human must be removed. The entire delegation must leave immediately. No, the voice was clear and strong, and it came from the entrance to the chamber. Princess Alindra walked in, her silver skin glowing in the focused light. She moved to the center of the room and faced the council without fear. Daughter, the High King said, his voice carefully neutral, you were not summoned to this meeting. I know. I came anyway. She looked around at the ancient faces watching her. I know what you are discussing. I know what you fear. But you are wrong. We're trying to protect you, Councillor Meath said. The resonance is a disease. This human is infecting you with dangerous emotions. Oh. And what if I want to be infected? The council stirred with shock. This was not how Valanthi spoke. This was passion, defiance, desire. These were human words from a Valanthi mouth. You do not know what you are saying, the High King said. You have been compromised. Your judgment cannot be trusted. My judgment is clearer than it has been in 4,000 years. Lendra's voice rose with something that was almost anger, almost fire. I have spent millennia feeling nothing, wanting nothing, being nothing, and I told myself it was wisdom. I told myself it was evolution, but it is not. It is death. We died millions of years ago, and we have been pretending to be alive ever since. That is the resonance talking, Counselor Dreth said dismissively. Oh. It is me talking. For the first time in my existence, it is actually me. Alendra turned to face her father directly. Father, do you remember what it felt like to hold me when I was young? Do you remember singing to me? Do you remember love? The High King's face remained stone, but somewhere deep inside, in that forgotten place, something cracked. Those memories are stored in the archives, he said. They can be accessed if necessary. That is not what I asked. I asked if you remember. Not the facts, but the feeling. Can you close your eyes and feel the warmth of holding your child? Silence. The High King did not answer because there was no answer to give. Commander Cole can, Alendra said softly. He told me about holding his sister when she was sick. He remembers exactly what it felt like. The weight of her in his arms. The smell of her hair. The desperate love that made him pray to every god he could think of. That memory lives inside him, Father. It is part of who he is. We threw all of that away. And for what? More years? More empty, meaningless years? Enough. The High King stood, his presence filling the chamber like a cold wind. The human delegation will leave tomorrow. This matter is closed. Then I invoke the trial of worth. The words fell like stones into still water. Every counselor went rigid. Even the High King showed something that might have been surprise. You cannot, he said. The ancient laws still stand. Any royal may invoke the trial of worth to prove the value of an outside species. If the trial is passed, the council must accept alliance with that species. It is my right, and I claim it. The trial of worth is a cruelty, Counselor Meath said. It has not been used in 8 million years because it is designed to break the spirit of any who attempted. Then it will prove whether humans deserve our respect. The High King studied his daughter for a long moment. She stood straight and tall, her black eyes burning with something that looked almost like hope. He barely recognized her, and yet, in that strange fire, he saw something familiar. Something he had not seen since before the long silence, when Volanthi still felt and loved and fought for things that mattered. Very well, he said at last. The trial of worth will proceed. Inform the human. Lindra bowed her head slightly, then turned and walked from the chamber. Her heart was racing. Her hands were trembling. These were sensations she had not experienced in thousands of years, and they were terrifying and wonderful all at once. She found Ethan in his quarters, sitting by the window and writing in a small book. Commander Cole, she said, I need to speak with you. He looked up and saw something in her face that made him close the book immediately. What is wrong? The council wants you to leave. They believe you are dangerous. They believe your emotions are infecting me, are they? Alindra paused. Yes, but I do not want it to stop. She moved closer, standing before him with an intensity she had never shown before. I have found a way. An ancient law that will let us prove humanity's worth to my people. But it requires a trial. A terrible trial. What kind of trial? You will be connected to our memory network. The entire Volanthi civilization will watch as you relive your most painful experiences. Every loss, every failure, every moment of grief and shame. If you break, if your spirit is destroyed by the pain, humanity will be exiled from our space forever. Ethan was quiet for a moment. He thought about the worst moments of his life. His sister dying in his arms. The 32 people he could not save. The crushing loneliness of a year spent alone after his ship crashed on an ice moon. These were wounds that still ached when he touched them. And if I do not break, he asked, then the alliance will be approved. My people will see that humans have something we lost long ago. Something we need to remember. Why are you doing this? Why risk so much for my people? Alindra knelt beside him, her silver face level with his. This close, Ethan could see the tiny tremors in her expression, the struggle to feel things she had not felt in millennia. "Because you made me feel again," she whispered. "For the first time in 4,000 years, I want something. I want to understand what you understand. I want to feel what you feel. And I am terrified, Commander Cole. I am more afraid than I have ever been. But you taught me that fear is not a reason to run away. Fear is just love worrying about losing something precious." Ethan looked into those endless black eyes and saw something he recognized. He saw himself 15 years ago, terrified before his first rescue mission. Choosing to fly into danger anyway, because someone needed him. He took her cool, silver hand in his warm human one. "I will do it," he said. "I will face the trial. It will hurt. More than anything you have ever experienced." "I know," he squeezed her hand gently. "But I have already lived through those moments once. I can do it again. And if it means helping you remember what it means to feel, then it will be worth it." Lendra's eyes glistened. It took her a moment to realize she was crying. She had not produced tears in 4,000 years. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet," Ethan said with a small smile. "Wait until I have done something worth thanking me for." The trial would begin tomorrow, and nothing would ever be the same. The Chamber of Trials was the oldest place on Valanthos Prime. It had been carved from a single, crystal mountain before humans had learned to speak. The walls were covered in ancient symbols that glowed with pale blue light. And at the center of the chamber stood a throne of twisted silver metal connected to thousands of thin wires that spread across the floor like a spider's web. Every Valanthi who could attend was there. Millions watched through connected viewing systems across the planet and throughout the Empire. This was the first trial of worth in 8 million years. History was being made. And even beings who had stopped caring about anything felt compelled to witness it. Ethan walked into the chamber alone. He wore simple clothes and carried nothing. His human advisors had wanted to come with him, but this was something he had to face by himself. He looked at the silver throne and the wires and the countless pale faces watching him, and he felt a tremor of fear run through his body. "Good," he thought. "Fear means I am still alive." Princess Alendra stood near the throne, her face carefully neutral for the watching crowds, but her eyes found his and held them. In that look was everything she could not say aloud. "Be strong. Come back to me, please." Ethan gave her a small nod. The High King rose from his seat and spoke in a voice that carried through the entire chamber without effort. "Human," he said, "you have agreed to undergo the trial of worth. You will be connected to our memory network. Your mind will be opened, and your experiences will become ours. We will witness your pain. If you endure with your spirit intact, your species will be judged worthy. If you break, you and your kind will be exiled forever." "I understand," Ethan said. "Then sit." Ethan walked to the throne and lowered himself into it. The metal was cold against his back. Valanthi technicians approached and attached thin wires to his temples, his neck, his chest. Each connection hummed with energy. "Close your eyes," the High King commanded. "And remember," Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then the first memory came crashing in like a wave. He was 16 years old again, sitting beside his sister's bed in the colony hospital. Maya was only 12, and the plague had already stolen most of her strength. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, her hands small and weak in his. "Ethi," she whispered. "I am scared." "I know, Maya, but I am here. I am not going anywhere. Promise me something? Anything. Keep flying. You always wanted to be a pilot. Promise me you will do it. Promise me you will touch the stars." Ethan felt the tears running down his face. In the Chamber of Trials, his body wept as his mind relived the worst moment of his life. "I promise," he whispered to the memory of his sister. "I promise, Maya." He held her hand as she slipped away. He held her hand as her breathing stopped. He held her hand for an hour after she was gone because he could not make himself let go. The Velanathi watched in silence. They expected him to shatter. They expected the grief to consume him, to break him into pieces that could never be put back together. That was what the trial was designed to do, to prove that emotions were weakness The feeling was destruction, but something else happened. In the midst of his grief, Ethan found himself smiling. Not because the pain was less, but because he was remembering Maya's laugh. The way she used to jump on his bed to wake him up. The stupid jokes she told. The drawings she made of him as a pilot that he still kept in his ship. The grief was there, overwhelming and endless. But so was the love. And somehow, impossibly, the love was bigger. "Thank you, Maya," he said to the memory. "Thank you for 12 years of being my sister. I kept my promise." I touched the stars. The memory faded, and the watching Volanthi stirred with confusion. This was not how the trial was supposed to go. The subject was supposed to be consumed by pain, not transformed by it, but there was no time to process this, because the next memory was already coming. Ethan was 28 now, standing on the bridge of the cargo ship Meridian as alarms screamed around him. There had been an explosion in the engine room. The ship was dying. 2 escape pods remained, and 60 people needed to be saved. Commander Cole, his first officer, shouted over the noise, "We have to choose. Pod A or Pod B. The rescue ship can only reach one before the other burns." Ethan looked at the screens showing both pods. 32 people in one, 28 in the other. Families, children, elderly, young. Human lives reduced to numbers on a screen. He had 30 seconds to choose who would live and who would die. "Pod A," he said. His voice broke as he said it. "Rescue pod A." He watched on the screen as the rescue ship changed course. He watched as Pod B, carrying 32 people, drifted toward the burning wreckage of the Meridian. He heard their voices on the communication system, screaming, praying, crying, and then silence. In the chamber of trials, Ethan collapsed forward in the throne. His body shook with sobs. The weight of those 32 souls pressed down on him like a mountain. But even as he wept, he spoke. "I am sorry," he said to the memory, to the ghosts of people he could not save. "I am so sorry. I chose because someone had to choose. I chose because 28 families got to see their children again. I will carry you with me forever. I will never forget your names. I will never stop being sorry." He straightened in the throne, tears still streaming down his face. "But I would make the same choice again," he whispered, "because that is what it means to be human. Sometimes there are no good options. Sometimes there is only pain and loss and impossible decisions, and we make them anyway. We carry the weight anyway, because giving up is not who we are." The Volanthi watched in stunned silence. This human was not breaking. He was bending, yes. He was suffering, yes. But somehow, impossibly, he was transforming his pain into something else. Something that looked like strength. Something that looked like meaning. More memories came. A failed relationship that broke his heart. A year alone on an ice moon after his ship crashed, surviving on nothing but stubborn will. The death of his father. The death of his mother. Loss after loss after loss. And through it all, Ethan wept and smiled and spoke to his ghosts. He apologized for his failures. He thanked his loved ones for the time they shared. He remembered the good moments alongside the bad. The Volanthi had expected to see a spirit destroyed by emotion. Instead, they were witnessing something they had forgotten was possible. They were watching a man alchemize pain into purpose. They were watching someone carry the weight of a mortal life and still choose to keep living, keep loving, keep feeling. It was beautiful. And it was terrifying. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last memory faded. Ethan slumped in the throne, exhausted, his face wet with tears, his body trembling. But he was still conscious. He was still whole. He opened his eyes and looked out at the assembly. "I am still here," he said. His voice was rough and raw, but it was strong. "I have felt everything. I have remembered everything. And I am still here." The chamber of trials was absolutely silent. Millions of Velananthi stared at this small human who had done the impossible. He had faced the full weight of a mortal life, and he had not broken. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a sound began. It was soft at first, almost imperceptible. A trembling, a gasping, a sound that no Valanthe had made in 6,000 years. Someone was crying, and then another, and another. Across the chamber, across the planet, across the empire. Valanthe, who had not felt emotion in millennia, found tears streaming down their silver faces. The resonance, triggered by the raw power of Ethan's journey, was spreading like wildfire. They were feeling again. At the front of the chamber, Princess Alendra fell to her knees. Her body shook with sobs she did not know how to control. Emotions she had not experienced in 4,000 years crashed through her like a flood breaking a dam. Joy and sorrow and fear and hope and something else, something warm and terrifying and precious love. She loved him. She loved this strange, brave, impossible human who had just shown her people what it meant to be alive. Ethan rose from the throne on unsteady legs and walked toward her. He knelt beside her and took her hands in his. "It is okay," he said gently. "The feelings are scary at first, but they will not destroy you. I promise." She looked up at him with eyes that were no longer empty. They were full of tears and wonder and something that looked like dawn after a long, dark night. "How do you do it?" she whispered. "How do you carry so much and still keep going?" Ethan smiled, tired but warm.
"Ah, yes."
"Because I am not carrying it alone," he said. "That is the secret, Alindra. You share the weight with people you love, and somehow it gets lighter." Behind them, the High King watched with tears running down his ancient face. For the first time in millions of years, he remembered what it felt like to hold his daughter when she was young, and he understood that everything was about to change. The days after the trial were chaos across the Valanthe Empire. Millions of beings who had not felt emotion in millennia were suddenly drowning in feelings they did not understand. Some wept for hours without knowing why. Some laughed at things that were not funny. Some found themselves overwhelmed by memories they had stored away like forgotten files. Now burning with color and meaning, the Council of Elders met in emergency sessions that lasted for days. Some counselors demanded that the emotional outbreak be contained, that new suppression protocols be developed, that the old ways be restored. But others, including several who had never disagreed with anything in their million-year existence, argued for something different. They argued for change. Princess Alindra did not attend the council meetings. She spent her days with Ethan, walking through the crystal gardens of the palace, sitting by the shores of the Silver Sea, talking for hours about everything and nothing. She was learning to feel. And Ethan was her teacher. "It is strange," she said one evening as they watched the three suns set over the water. "For 4,000 years, I looked at sunsets and saw only physics. Light scattering through atmosphere. Predictable, measurable, meaningless." She paused. "Now I look at this, and I feel something I do not have a word for. It is like my chest is too full, like something wants to burst out of me." "That is wonder," Ethan said, "mixed with maybe a little sadness." "Why sadness?" "Because beautiful things end. That sunset will be gone in a few minutes. You will never see exactly this one again. The sadness is part of what makes it precious." Lindra considered this. "Your species feels this way all the time? This mixture of joy and sorrow? Pretty much constantly, yes? How do you function?" Ethan laughed. It was a warm sound that Alindra had come to treasure more than anything in her long existence. "Honestly, some days we do not function very well, but we keep going anyway. We drink coffee, complain to our friends, watch silly videos of cats, and somehow make it to the next day." "What are cats? Small furry animals that humans worship as gods?" Alindra blinked. "I cannot tell if you are joking. Neither can we, to be honest." She laughed then, really laughed, and the sound surprised her so much that she stopped and touched her own face in wonder. Ethan watched her with eyes full of warmth. "You're beautiful when you laugh," he said. "I do not mean your face, although that is beautiful too. I mean all of you. The way your eyes light up. The way you forget to be composed. You are beautiful when you are just yourself." Alindra felt warmth spread through her chest. She had studied human emotional responses enough to know what this feeling was. But knowing it intellectually and experiencing it were two very different things. Ethan, she said softly, there is something I need to tell you. What is it? The council has made a decision about my people's future. We are going to try to reawaken our emotions permanently. Not all at once, but slowly with guidance. It will take generations, maybe longer. But we are going to try to become alive again. Ethan's face broke into a wide smile. That is wonderful. There is more. She turned to face him fully, her silver hands finding his. I have made a decision about my own future as well. I am going to give up my immortality. The words hung in the air. Ethan stared at her. What? Immortality was always a choice, not a requirement. The treatments that stop our aging can be reversed. It takes time, but it can be done. She took a shaky breath. I want to be mortal, Ethan. I want to have a finite life filled with meaning instead of an endless existence filled with nothing. I want to feel everything, the joy and the pain and the love and the loss. I want to live the way you live, Lindra, that is. Are you sure? You would be giving up millions of years, or would be giving up millions of empty years for maybe 60 or 70 full ones. Her dark eyes found his. Is that not a good trade? Ethan thought about his own life, the good years and the bad years, the losses that still ached and the joys that still warmed him. 60 or 70 years that felt like a gift every single day. Yes. He said, I think that is the best trade anyone could ever make. Lindra smiled, and it reached all the way to her eyes. There is one more thing. The reason I am telling you all of this. Yes. She stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the tiny imperfections in her silver skin. The places where emotion was already beginning to leave its marks. Signs of life. Signs of living. I am not very good at this yet, she said. 4,000 years without practice. But I need to say something, and I need you to know that I mean it completely. Ethan's heart was pounding. Okay, I have watched you for weeks now. I have seen how you carry your pain without letting it crush you. I have seen how you love without holding back, even though you know love can hurt. I have seen how you treat everyone, from kings to servants, with the same kindness and respect. You are the most alive person I have ever met. And somewhere between your rambling stories about cats and your terrible dancing and the way you smile when you are being brave, I fell in love with you. She paused, trembling slightly. I love you. Ethan Cole. Ethan felt his eyes filling with tears. Happy tears, the kind that came from a heart too full to contain itself. He reached out and cupped her silver face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that were running down her cheeks. I was not sure if I should say anything, he whispered. I did not know if it was possible. If you could feel this way, if it was right to even hope, and now? Now I know. He took a deep breath. Alindra, I know this is crazy. I know we are different species from different worlds. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this should not work. But somewhere between your impossible questions and my rambling answers, I fell in love with you too. He smiled through his tears. I love you, Alindra. The words settled around them like a warm blanket. For a moment, neither of them moved. The three suns finished their descent, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, and the first stars began to appear. Then Alindra smiled. It was not the careful, controlled expression she had worn in the court. It was wild and bright and full of joy, and it transformed her face into something radiant. At last, she whispered. Ethan blinked. What? At last. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling wider than ever. I have been waiting, Ethan. Not just me, but my people, my civilization. We have been waiting for 10,000 years for something we did not know we needed. Someone who would show us what we lost. Someone who would remind us what it means to be alive. Her voice broke with emotion. Someone who would mean it when they said those words. Mean what? I love you. She laughed through her tears. In 10,000 years, countless beings have said those words to Velalinthi royalty. Diplomats, supplicants, flatterers. They all said the words, but none of them meant it. It was just sounds, empty and hollow. But you meant it. I could feel it, Ethan. Your love is real. It is the most real thing I have ever experienced. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. At last, she said again, someone finally meant it. Ethan closed his eyes and breathed her in. She smelled like crystal flowers and starlight, like something ancient and new all at once. I will always mean it, he said. Every day, for whatever time we have, I will mean it. They stood there together as night fell over Valantho's prime. Above them, the stars emerged one by one, countless points of light representing civilizations both living and dead. Species who had risen and fallen, stories that had played out across millions of years. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was to people from different worlds, who had found each other across the vast emptiness of space. What mattered was a human who had taught an immortal how to feel, and an alien princess who had given up eternity for love. What mattered was that the universe, cold and ancient and indifferent as it was, could still produce moments like this. Moments where connection conquered distance, where feeling triumphed over fear, where love, that most human of emotions, proved to be something even the stars could not ignore. In the years that followed, humanity and the Valanthi built an alliance that changed the galaxy. Technology was shared, knowledge was exchanged, and slowly, carefully, the oldest civilization in the universe began learning to feel again. It was not easy. There were setbacks and struggles and moments of doubt, but they kept going. Guided by the example of a pilot from Earth who had shown them what courage really meant. And through it all, Commander Ethan Cole and Princess Alendra walked side by side. They married in a ceremony that blended human and Valanthi traditions. They had children who carried both heritages within them. They grew old together, each gray hair and wrinkle a badge of honor marking a life fully lived. On the day Alendra died, 87 years after she had chosen mortality, Ethan held her hand just as he had held his sister's hand so long ago. Her silver skin had faded to pale gray, and her dark eyes had grown dim, but she was smiling. No regrets, she whispered. None, Ethan agreed through his tears. Not a single one. Will you miss me? Every day for the rest of my life? Good, she squeezed his hand weakly. That is what it means to love. You taught me that. She closed her eyes and her breathing slowed, and she slipped away with the same grace with which she had lived. Ethan held her hand for a long time after, and when he finally let go, he looked up at the sky where 3 suns were setting and smiled. Thank you, he said to the stars, to the universe, to whatever force had brought them together. Thank you for her. Thank you for everything. Somewhere out in the cosmos, a new star was being born. It blazed to life in a burst of light, adding one more point of brightness to the endless night. And if the universe had a voice, it might have whispered the same words Alendra had spoken all those years ago. At last, at last. Someone had shown the stars what it meant to be human, and the stars had finally learned to feel.